So SDI starts up, and there's some significant challenges there, and the idea that technical divers are getting into sport diving, what could you possibly know? And then if you do show that you know stuff, then you obviously must be egotistical, because what, do you just know more than us type of scenario. How much flack did the other industry players give you guys for trying to get into that space?
There was flack, and some of it was playful competition,
yeah.
and some of it wasn't.
Yeah.
So you're trying to, anytime there's competition in a space, I think it's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
As long as the competition is done in a respectful way.
Mm-hmm.
But some players weren't really respectful about somebody new coming in and trying to innovate and change the space. So
yeah.
you have to deal with that while growing something that's new. And if you look at the progression of diving, we went backwards in a way. TDI, then SDI. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at the way things, quote unquote, should have been, it should have been SDI, then TDI, but it almost worked better mm-hmm. that way, where it's not as expected.
Yeah. Can you expand upon why it was better?
It gave us a chance to work on something, which was TDI, that was always going to be smaller. It was always going to be more intimate. Technical diving is not for everybody. It is a small component of our business. And the SDI portion of the international training brands is the dominant brand by far. Mm-hmm. So we had a chance to try certain things out with TDI, the way the standards are written, the way that our database was built, the way that we service customers. And then when you launch something like SDI, you give it the potential to grow while already making the mistakes with the smaller of the brands, if you will.
That makes sense. So we're not going to get in, because there's no way to sit through the time of going through all the different agencies, but now it has grown to international training overall, and it's 5 different training agencies.
Yes.
And there's obviously some challenges into that. Without going into each individual one, what was it like going from one small technical diving company, to like 5 different brands?
The only way we were able to do it is because of the people that we were able to surround ourselves with. We were able to grow in a methodical way. A lot of this was already thought out. We don't typically jump into something without giving it some thought, and getting the buy-in from our team was essential. So that was what made it work and made us more comfortable in taking the leap of faith, if you will, with the bringing different brands on, because it's a lot of work. But if you systematically build something out and you think, you don't limit yourself in how big it could be, that was what kind of changed the game.
Yeah. Were there other specific challenges that you had as an owner, as leadership, that came into play as you were trying to grow this?
Yes. Many.
Yes.
Many challenges. Challenges from a personal side, knowing, am I doing the right thing? Am I giving enough to those that are giving to me? Do I leverage everything I have to add something new into this? Can I make an ROI on this? Because if I don't, or I can't, why would I try to damage what I've already built? So kind of stepping stones of business. You analyze as much as you can, and then not a lot of it, but there is a leap of faith you have to take. So eliminating the what ifs and thinking about them in a focused way and getting buy-in from others was really important. So there were so many challenges. Where do we put the business? It was originally in Maine. Well, it was in Florida. Then it went to Maine, Maine, and then we moved it back to Florida. That was a strategic move. Mm-hmm. So we knew that not everybody could come with us to Florida. How do we keep the team working in 2 locations? That was a challenge. um, the growing pains, if you will. Like when kids grow, their joints ache. They have literal growing pains. We have the same. Do we have a big enough space? What type of benefits do we pay or do we provide for the team? All of that comes into play. So there are challenges almost at every turn, but it's expected, I think, in business. It's
right, and you're mixing. You got that business side of running a regular business, and then you've got diving on top of it, and the very interesting individuals that are in the diving industry.
Yes.
On top of trying to run a business with other rational people. And divers might not necessarily always be the most rational.
Sometimes not.
Sometimes not. Sometimes they are.
Sometimes not.
But it's not a given.
No. No.
Not even slightly. So, which is an interesting thing, because our industry is built on, no offense to these individuals, but our industry is very much so built on people that take a hobby and want to make a hobby into a business and might not necessarily have that business background.
Correct.
And you are running a successful business on top of a lot of people that are running it as a hobby potentially and biting off more than they can chew, essentially, to some degree.
Yes, we have seen that. We've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah. So is there anything you've done personally or as a company to help those individuals in your tenure?
At many of the DEMA shows, we run clinics, marketing clinics, how to sell clinics. We do, this is pre-pandemic, we would host inside HQ a peek into how we run our social media, how we run our marketing departments. A lot of our blog posts are centered around business and how try these tips, try this, try that. And it's not just some arbitrary thing that we pull out of the fire. Yeah. It's something that we've done and it happened to work. So we share as much as we possibly can with the membership, because if they grow, we grow. Yep. It's a symbiotic relationship, and to not share that, I think, is a detriment.
I would agree absolutely 100%. So, all right. So, question: you are going into the Women Divers Hall of Fame, which is congratulations.
Thank you.
Not a problem. So, it presents this idea of we want to focus on women in the sport to identify the fact that women should have a bigger area in the sport. But at the same time, if we focus on women in the sport and we focus on women in the sport, it then is somewhat detrimental to the attempt at moving women up in the sport to some degree. Is that a somewhat correct statement? Like, you want to highlight it, but if you focus on it solely and it's just about that, then it takes away some of that specialness.
You definitely want to highlight it, but making it overt in the way that you're approaching a message to the masses or to people that are just coming into the sport, it's something that you have to tread lightly. I've been able to see more women enter into the sport, which is fantastic. It's been much needed, and in the conversations that I have with many of these diving professionals, they're still dealing with things that they shouldn't have to deal with at this point in time. So I do think that we need to highlight more of the women that are in the sport and that are thriving, so that others feel a bit more comfortable entering into the sport, because we're unfortunately not quite there yet where you and I would be seeing the same on a dive boat. Mm-hmm. As much as I would love to say we would be.
Yeah, don't disagree at all with that statement. And it's sad.
It is quite sad. I mean, you have daughters. You don't want them to be seen differently. Yep. I have a son, and I don't want him to see women differently. You're on an even playing field.
And have you seen it get better?
Yes.
Yeah. because when it started out, especially in technical diving, it was a lot. Even the way that they handled each other was, each other being the males in the sport. Like the males that were trying to interact was just all about macho, overly overt maleness, and then you add a female in there and it is even, I'm assuming, worse.
Yes, I mean, women, say there's a boat going out to the Doria.
Mm-hmm.
A woman should not be seen as an enigma on that boat.
Yes. Yeah.
I think if you look at the pure percentages that are on those technical dives, it's heavily in favor of males.
Mm-hmm.
But it is changing, because
Yeah.
before you would see seasons without women.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're seeing more and more women on every boat, which is a promising thing. It's somebody posed this question to me, and she lives in Malta, and we happened to get a chance to connect, and she asked me what I thought the hiccup or the reservation for women getting into technical diving was, and I can't pinpoint it. I don't know. And that's a really interesting question, because there should be no reason for somebody that wants to get into technical diving to not.
Mm-hmm.
To not.
Yeah.
And why is it so heavily male-dominated still? I don't know. But it was a really interesting question that I think about.
That is an excellent question.
I don't know. Because even the gear manufacturers have listened.
Mm-hmm.
The gear is customized more to smaller frames, to
Yep.
different frames. Not everybody is 5'8".
Yep.
Some are shorter, some are taller.
Yep.
Some have different width of the hips. It's just body composition. So the gear manufacturers have listened, and
and that capability's out there now. I mean, not
yes.
that it necessarily wasn't, because there was some simplistic stuff, but there's a little bit more
variety.
Yeah, more variety. And that is interesting to not see. I mean, we are seeing an increase, but not to the degree that we'd like to see the increase, right? Like, we'd like to see some. So, what do you think we could do to increase that? I mean, it kind of piggybacks on the question we couldn't answer, but like,
seeing more in the advertisements that are done in the blogs, in the manuals, male and female represented equally. And so if you see a potential, if you look like somebody that you're seeing in these advertisements and these social posts, it opens up the idea that this is possible. I'm welcome in this space.
Creates positive role models.
Correct.
that you can emulate, or at least feel a little more comfortable. If they can do that, I could do that.
Correct.
Also. Yeah. And did you have any of those while you were starting out that you could see?
There were few. There were trailblazers.
Yep.
So I kind of tried to emulate them.
Who were them?
Jan Neal and Denise Morissette were some of the first. They were the first writers of the Nitrox manual for TDI, or they were the second set of writers. One of the two. They were influential. Kathy Wadig was influential. Is influential. Kathy Simino. She wasn't necessarily a diver, but she was a business owner in the diving realm. She was influential. So you can see that people look like you. And Tanya Burnett was at TDI, part of TDI before I was, a trailblazer.
Yep.
So Catherine Castle, the Dive Training Magazine, you see what's capable, or what's possible.
Yeah. And the reason I asked that is, even though there are trailblazers, especially at the beginning of times, some of that stuff was behind the scenes stuff, or kind of given just enough, but still behind the curtain type of stuff.
Yes.
So I mean, you see that in lots of different cultures in lots of different ways, but I think those names deserve to be said because those are the individuals that were, starting out in there. And you said them to me in the past with different things, but I think that, hearing it out a little bit further is a really good thing.
Yeah.
So, that's good.